feeding them Arnold sea bush.
Exactly. Throwing
out.
out tunas to them. Goes out there a week before throwing out tuna.
She's ready if you want to get started or.
Shoot, heck yeah, let's do it.
Okay. And you can edit out Chuck's foul language, Heather. And
It's not my foul language, it's some of the stuff that Broadus used to say.
Are you filming that?
Yeah, I'm just hoping I can hear you guys, but I can turn y'all up later, so, you know, don't talk softly. Hey Chuck,
Oh
if
yeah,
you could
Buzz,
move
don't talk
ever so
softly.
slightly towards Jim, then I can see all of you, and, yeah,
Come
that's
on
good,
over.
that's good. I mean, y'all don't have to sit side by side, but that's good.
Wait a minute.
Alright,
This is awful suspect, isn't it? Like,
Everybody's holding the fire during this session. Right? Don't be breaking wind or nothing.
Right.
this on
You got me in a corner, I can't get out.
Well, if you do, tune up anyway. All right.
Name that tune.
Need that too.
To Broadus.
Broadus.
Yep.
the big guy's with us, in case you guys didn't know.
I saw that.
In his BR 549.
Let's do it proper.
All right.
So
I need to be full.
he's hanging out today.
I thought you were joking about the BR540.
Oh, we were not joking at all.
The Broadus.
To Broadus. Guys, want a sip?
No, I'm good.
cheers
This is delicious. Though.
to Broadus.
So,
Thank you.
obviously, I'm BJ, Broadus' son. If you guys introduce yourselves, how you know Broadus, and then, hey, whoever has known him longest can start it off. I don't know who that is.
Probably Buzz.
No, I probably don't. It's
Probably you, Chuck.
You were his name.
I met him when I was either 13 or 14.
You know him the longest.
Yeah. And
John Bunny.
yeah.
Heather's
John Bone.
husband.
I was Broadus' neighbor when we were kids. And so I guess I have known him the longest.
I'm Chuck, and I met Broadus at Hale High School, and that is Hale. Reverend George B.S. Hale. So that's where I first met the big guy.
Well, Broadus sold me a boat. That's how I met it. But
What year was that, Jim?
that was in the early '70s. It was a John Oman Titanium boat.
26?
No, 23. But Broadus had ordered a larger John Oman. I don't remember what size it was. 28.
He bought a 28.
Yeah.
His dad bought a 28.
Yeah, that's when I met Broadus over the boat.
A clarification,
And-
Buzz, you just said his dad bought him a 28. So Pop bought the 28 and Broadus sold the 23. That was probably Pop's to Jim.
Well, they were both.
Well, he was good at arithmetic.
It was his dad's boat.
Okay.
It was his dad's boat.
And Buzz, what year did you meet
I met him in high school.
in high school?
At Hale with Chuck.
Okay.
71? 1971 we started, I believe.
Yeah.
Oh, we graduated at 73. So take your socks off and help me count. 73, 72, we started senior season. We were the first graduating class of Hale High School,
That's right.
1973.
That's right.
And we started up at the top of the hill in North Hills, and they were building the new high school down at the bottom. So our senior season, we moved down to the bottom. Whitaker Mill Road, across from the mill, then to the new Hale High School. So we broke it in. Reverend Hale was, can't wait for y'all to graduate. Can't wait, y'all need to get out of this school. Y'all are bad, all 13 of us. 13 of us in that class. Broadus was somewhat the ringleader. Buzz would egg him on. And I would just sit back and just flip my thumb.
Do you remember the time? Remember the time we hid that beer in the ice cream freezer? Father Hale went in there to get him an ice cream sandwich. And he said he couldn't find anything but Budweiser. It's a good thing he liked us, or he'd have kicked us out of school.
And he had his times, and Mrs. Brock would keep us in line and let us know when to calm down. And we had a senior lounge under the gym down, Mr. Emerson, the math teacher. Do you remember him?
I kinda do.
Okay, but he was one of the, let's just say he would participate with the students in their activities in the senior lounge. And
What was his name again?
Emerson, Mr. Emerson.
I think I remember.
Yeah.
He's not on the guest list, so he's safe. We're not.
We'll stop there.
So didn't Father Hill take y'all out the night before graduation then?
He would take us out at lunch. We'd go out to North Hill, sit there for lunch. He would order wine for all the girls and the ladies and the guys, could have a beer. Cool guy, George B.S. Hill.
Nice guy, he really was.
Really good guy. He provided a good service for all those kids. We were all rejects. We were rejects from other schools, Broadus and Buzz.
Yeah, we had a good time.
King. Broadus would have that band, that blue and white band.
Blue and white band.
Should we discuss ladies at that point? Should we discuss the real karate kicks that BJ was telling about?
Oh, you got me intrigued, so let's go for it.
Well, there was a young lady you seen at the time, way before Miss Rochelle's time, and I'll bring y'all up to speed on how they met too. Linda was up the road,
Oh, yeah.
and I'm not sure if Linda will be there, so you may need to edit this, Heather. Linda was down from New York, and she was going to Hill High School. Broadus was, what, 600 yards from her house? She was
Probably, that's about right, yeah.
Right.
You knew him, didn't you?
What was it?
They bought you bought their house.
Easton's.
Easton.
Easton.
Easton's. Yeah, I bought the
I did
house.
invite her, by the way.
You're,
Well, then we don't need to talk about her boyfriend and Broadus beating his ass.
Oh,
Real karate kids. Anyway, she had a boyfriend in New York. Broadus, and they was like, okay, you need to get rid of him, he's not. And she's like, well, get rid of him, but he's coming down, I got to do it gently. Well, Broadus didn't want to be gentle. So he found out that Bill was in town and started doing this, all his karate stuff, and poor little Bill went back to New York. You don't have to edit that. I'm sorry.
Don't worry about the cameras, y'all just talk.
Okay.
Don't,
Yeah.
forget about the cameras.
I do wanna tell a karate story that I don't want you to,
Y'all just forget about the cameras.
but, and I can tell it later, I don't wanna jump ahead, cause it was back in the nineties, when Broadus, do you remember when we were doing Taekwondo? And, Broadus and I were, we were testing for our first belt. And so we went up there to test, and there was a bunch of people in there. There was people lined up all around the wall, and we were all on the mats. And then all of a sudden, Master Lee comes in. He was like, he was an Olympic champion. And we were all excited that Master Lee was gonna test us. And so he would ask, we all stood in a line, and he asked people to do certain kicks. Well, he asked, I did a kick, and then he asked Broadus to do a kick. And when he kicks, he throws his leg up, and he cuts the biggest fart you ever heard in your life. And he had an audience of about 75 people. And I hit the mat laughing. I had my hands over my face laughing. Broadus's face got about that red right there.
Did he say, name that tune?
No, he did not. He did not.
Did he even wish you a Merry Christmas?
But he had an audience for that one. That's one of the funniest things. But everybody would admit he was one of the funniest guys there's ever been. And Broadus got into so many different activities and say sports, but activities and just fun things. I mean, never a dull moment, was it?
oh no.
Jack of all trades.
When one year and Buzz, this is when we were all going to Disney every year. but Broadus got that fart machine. And this was the absolute funnest Disney trip I can ever remember.
That was
And
good.
we're walking, and you stand in line. You're in line for an hour, you know. And Broadus would have that thing in his back pocket, or he tied a rope around it so he could put it around his neck. And he'd get right up next to somebody, and you know he was not bashful. He'd stand just like this, and he'd go, and he'd hit that button just like this, and he'd whoop, and people's faces would go red. They'd go turning and walking away. Oh, and then, oh, it was.
Oh, and they would hold their nose.
Yeah, like something
would
happened.
go like this. The little girl would go like, oh.
They'd be poking their parents. You know what I mean? For a full week. It wasn't just one day at one line. I mean, he did this everywhere. We'd be on the bus. As soon as it get quiet on the bus to ride back to the on that machine, he'd sit back there, and as all of us, he'd say "Joy" or something like that. You know,
Merry
Merry
Christmas.
Christmas.
And that reminds me of the part. I hope you can find the bubble machine for when we do when you have the celebration of life. Because do you have that?
Yeah.
I think that'd be a really fun thing to have. That Broadus bubble machine.
He bought. You know, Broadus he never did. He was always funny. He never did anything on a small scale. There's no such thing. And so when he bought the bowl machines, you know, he bought like 3 of the things because we had to have one for every corner of the house, as if that was necessary for any reason at all. But last time we were at Disney, you know, he's talking about how he can buy one of the snow machines that they shoot off the roofs of Disney, and he's going to put it out here in the backyard. Crazy.
I remember him talking about that.
So.
Well, while you talking about breaking wind and stuff, I've got one I'll have to tell.
It's about you or Broadus.
It's a Broadus. I was just an innocent bystander.
Yeah.
But, you know, the whole family, the Rose family was unique in a lot of ways. And when they got rid of the almond, they bought that 35 Bertram. So it was up in Norfolk, and there'd been stuff going on, trying to get ready to bring back. Broadus and Dr. Rose and myself were going to go up and bring it back on a Friday evening. We drove up. And the dealer's supposed to have all the problems fixed and all that. So they go in, the deal's closed, and we're gonna start back. We figure we can make it back to Moorhead by the next day. Halfway somewhere between Norfolk and Great Bridge, lose one engine, starts overheating. So Broadus is like looking at his dad, well, what do we do now? I mean, they're on the phone, they're calling the dealer. Hey, we've got an engine overheating. If we turn back now, what's going to happen? What do we need to do? We've got one engine going good. And the dealer kind of said, okay, well, you can make it on one engine back to Moorhead, and we'll come down and fix it then. We don't have anybody. It's the weekend. You'll have to sit here all weekend. And Dr. Rhodes was like, I've got to be back to work Monday morning. Broadus was, I've got to be back to work Monday morning. I sure enough had to be back to work Monday morning. So they made the decision to continue on. We go on one engine, try to run all night. So we get the coin jock, and you know, we figured a one-day trip. So we had some nabs, we had some peanut M&Ms, not much food. We figured we'd stop somewhere and get something to eat. So we tied up the coin jock, starting to get dark, and they're trying to figure out how are we going to get back to Moorhead and be to work by Monday morning. Trying to figure out the time. So here comes a tug with this big spotlight on. He's making about 6 knots. And everybody immediately like, hey, we can follow this guy all night long. We'll be so much closer. We'll be in Moorhead by tomorrow afternoon. Those lines off. We didn't go in to eat. Didn't get any other supplies. So we followed the tug all night long. Get down about Bellhaven, daylight. We make it into Moorhead City. But that night, following that tug, the next morning, Dr. Rose gets up, Broadus is steering. Dr. Rose says, boys, I've got to go to the bathroom. Okay. So he goes down, and back then, the boats had what I call a boogity toilet. Old diaphragm, pumped it over into the electric sand, and then it was pumped overboard. And you could pretty much hear that toilet, you know, above everything else. It made so much noise. So Dr. Rose comes down, and Broadus is steering. I'm sitting at the dinette. Dr. Rose comes up the companionway and he's just kind of little grin on his face, doesn't say a word. Comes over to the dinette and Broadus is like, okay, Chuck, come hold the wheel. I've got to go to the bathroom. So I get up, steering the wheel. Broadus goes down the steps. Next thing we hear the oh shit! Plus a few other words. So I'm sitting there holding the wheel, and I look back at Dr. Rose. He's at the dinette. He's just his same old smile on his face. Broadus comes up the companionway. He gets his elbows up and he looks up, and it is dripping all over his face. It's dripping all over his face and his beard. And the cuss words go flying. I look back, Dr. Rose just didn't say a word. So he goes down, gets cleaned up. We make it on into Moorhead. Everybody gets back to work Monday morning. Broadus called, hey, we got to go down and fix that head next weekend. Okay. He had some ladies coming the next weekend. We got to fix that head for the weekend. So we get down there next weekend, Friday night. And the whole time, nobody knows why that head plucked up. So we're down in the bills, starting to pull hoses, clamps off. And we pull the hose off, and out rolls these peanut M&Ms. And Dr. Rose pulled that head up and just didn't say anything. That's all we had was snacks and peanut M&Ms, and it was amazing that he just came back up and that smile at the dinette. I'll never forget Broadus sticking his head up that companion. It was dripping off his face.
I never heard that story.
You know how guys will sit there and they pee and they look down and they hit the button and you're trying to make sure everything clears.
Yeah.
It exploded off his face.
Broadus never told me that story. I guess it's
Never
nothing to
heard
brag.
it.
Nothing to brag
He- he-
I
about.
couldn't help but laugh, and I remember Broadus telling me that story. That toil on that boat gave him trouble forever. Finally took it off. I remember one time it broke one year. We had to have we used a 5-gallon bucket. Every time somebody had to go use it, we'd turn sideways so the boat would start rolling. So he's sitting in his squat, chasing a bucket around the floor.
I remember talking about when we first met Broadus. Chuck and Broadus had built these rectangular boxes, I guess. How big were they?
6 by 10.
6
by 10.
Yeah, yeah.
I
And
don't
they
think
were
his mom
blocked.
and dad- yeah,
And
I
he-
don't think his mom and dad were happy about it.
I don't think they were. I do remember that. And they had Broadus had filled it up with mulch, these 2 boxes, and I walked out there, and I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, I'm going to start selling worms." He was going to raise worms and start selling worms, and there were lights out there, and I said, "What are the lights for?" He said, "Well, the lights have to be on at night, or the worms will crawl out and crawl away." And it was probably a week or 2 later. There was a bad thunderstorm, and it knocked the power out. And that next morning, I went outside, and Broadus was out there running around trying. I kept seeing him do this, and I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Well, the lights went out last night." He goes, "All my worms crawled away." So he was up in the woods, but I think he abandoned that project.
I didn't think it ever even got off the ground.
He got off the ground that night when
I don't think he ever saw the first worm, did he?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, he put the worms in there, and then they.
But I don't think he ever sold any, though, did he?
No, they crawled away.
Oh, mercy. When did he start? So the van, the blue and white van,
Yeah.
That was high school.
is this the same van that he wrecked in Florida?
No, he totaled the one in Florida.
Yeah,
He
that one, the
totaled
same
the-
blue and white one.
No,
Okay.
he totaled that right before he started at Hale, didn't he? You remember him talking about totaling his van?
He got the blue and white one as a replacement.
That's right. That's right.
So how did he total the van in Florida?
He was down there with some friends. I don't remember the whole story. And I think he ran a stop sign. Didn't he say he ran a stop sign? They were honking a horn at somebody, and the guy ran his bicycle into the bushes or something. They were laughing, and he ran the stop sign. I think he said there was a red light, and it told him. He said his mother had to come down there and drive him home. Remember that? Isn't that what he told us? I don't.
I remember somebody said he lost his license for a year in the state of Florida or
I
something
think
of
he
that
did.
nature.
Didn't he? Robbie could probably tell you that. I
Yeah.
think he did.
Well, you know, Broadus, of course, Broadus loved flying, and he got a lot of people into flying. You know, he got. Did he get you into it, Jim? Or
He did.
He got you into it. He got me into it. He got BJ into it.
Andy.
Andy Lasco, Eddie Robinson.
My claim to fame.
No, Eddie was his teacher.
Yeah, my claim
Was
to
he?
fame is
Okay,
Broadus and I gave you one of your first airplane rides.
the first airplane ride. I'll always be grateful for you guys for that too. But yeah, he influenced a lot of people in a good way. But you knew whenever you got together with Broadus, you were gonna have a good time. You always knew that.
So, Broadus when you owned First in Flight, Broadus got me started taking lessons. I turned 16 on a Saturday, and so I couldn't go get my license, so it was solo day. And David Leahy was my instructor, and he was awesome. Now that I'm instructing, I read the rule books, and we probably broke quite a few of them back in the day, because he would let me throw stuff out over ponds, and we did spins, and all this stuff that we probably shouldn't have done. Here I am on solo day, January 25th, 2003. It's cold. Might have even been like snowing. I mean, it was cold outside. John, David, and Broadus are there. I taxi out for my takeoff, and here I go. I'm thinking to myself, well, if you pull up on the yoke, you're in the air. You're gonna land somehow. This is like I'm scared as all get out. I get up in the air. Well, here we go. I come back around. My first landing, everything's looking great. Look over, and not even on the taxiway, but on the edge of the runway, John, David, and Broadus, full moon, right on the side of the runway. So here I am trying to land a plane for the first time at 16. And I look over and boom, boom, boom. Oh God, this is not the story I wanted to see today.
And you know whose idea that was.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that was. That was funny. So,
He scared me one night. There were always ladies involved. Always ladies. He was a ladies' man. Great guy. Had two ladies from Swansburg. So something happened down here. We had to come down here. Both of us had to get back the next morning. So we got down here, took care of whatever event it was, and now it's midnight. He's like, I don't have my rating. I can't fly this city. I can't fly us home. So he calls Greg Poole. And I had probably not been in an airplane yet. I don't remember. So Greg comes down, picks us up, and we're flying back to Raleigh, and you can't see him. I'm sitting there. This is so foggy, I can't see the wingtip, lights on the wingtip. What's gonna happen? So we finally get down and break it down, you see lights on the highway, and then we land. And Broadus told me the whole time, oh, it's all good, all good. Don't worry about it, all good. Greg's got it. And a while before I got back in there.
I tell you that Broadus was a talented pilot though. Remember he had that Aerostar twin engine. It was a very fast. I'm sure you're familiar with a very fast airplane, and he was operating that aircraft out of a 3,000 foot strip, and 4,000 would have been a lot better, right, Jim? But I remember we would take off downhill at Nightdale, and there was a fence at the end of the runway, and we would barely clear that fence every time. But Broadus handled it like a pro every single time.
We were flying, I had my camera, and I'm looking through the camera lens, and Broadus rolls the Aerostar. I had no earthly idea, and you should have seen what that looked like through the camera. He said, Andy taught me how to do that.
He rolled it with me in there too. I was sitting in it. I trusted Broadus so much, I actually sat in the back seat. And while I was back there with another commercial pilot, Broadus rolled that airplane, and it was just perfect. So he could fly. He could tell a story too, couldn't he?
He loved it.
Yeah. Remember the best joke that I ever heard Broadus tell. It was the funniest thing to me was the one about he was talking about. I think he actually used himself. He says, I flew out to California, and he said when we landed, and he says, I went and jumped in a taxi, and the taxi cab driver says, where do you want to go? Broadus said, I want to go to San Jose. And the taxi driver said, no, out here you pronounce all your J's like H's. Broadus said, oh, I didn't know that. And he said, well, how long do you plan on being out here? Broadus said, all through whom to who I.
Jojo Gunn. That was the tape from Jojo Gunn.
And the way Broadus told that story, I never got tired of it. It was the funniest thing I'd ever heard. You can hear him say that right now. Whom to who I.
He used to talk about the one where he moved into the Hispanic neighborhood, and I don't remember how it goes, but he said, what was it? Don't tend to or something. It was a long, drawn out joke, but it was every phrase that he was having a conversation with his neighbor, and he was raking the yard, and his neighbor told him he couldn't rake the yard, and Broadus told him he was going to hit him with the rake, but everything that he said, Broadus had a comeback joke for whatever the guy said. I can't remember what the heck that story was. I have to think of it. I wish that would have been recorded because that was pretty funny.
Yeah, he could tell a story.
Yeah.
He got me good down in Florida that day, that weekend, Jim. The time that you and Broadus picked me up at the airport in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah, but we had a big adventure in front of us, so we were all excited about it. We picked John up at the airport. He had on these nice white slacks. We had a convertible.
It was a convertible. It was.
Had to get rid of it because it was messing up John's hair. But we had it for a while. Had a nice cooler of beer in the back seat, iced down. Well, it was a styrofoam cooler, and it wicked water in the seat. We tried to clean it up, but we didn't.
I don't think you did. I
We
don't
didn't
think you
tell
tried
him.
real hard, Jim.
Hey, Jim, Broadus told me that they had set you up for that. He said, Buzz, John's coming down here, and the back seat's wet. We're not going to tell him.
And he did not tell me. And I sat down in that wet seat and didn't know it.
But the
Because
funniest,
it was so hot.
the funniest thing I've ever seen was when John got out and the back of his pants was wet. He said, I'm wet, man.
I said, God, I didn't realize it was that hot down here. I was sweating like a dog down here. Yeah, Broadus enjoyed that one.
But Jim, you gotta finish that story, because where did y'all go after that?
Oh yeah, that's part 2.
That's right.
We eventually made it to Key West.
Not knowing what we were getting into.
First
Oh,
time
yeah.
ever.
Oh, yeah.
Broadus probably.
Sure, John. Carol said Jim hadn't been the same since.
Yeah, Broadus misled me and Jim, I'll tell you that.
But you know, I was standing on the street, and this lady walked by me, and it took 10 or 15 seconds for me to realize she didn't have anything on up here, was painted. First time I'd ever seen anything like that.
Well, tell them what we had stumbled into was Fantasy Fest. And we didn't know
right.
what that was. We do now. But we didn't know what that was back then. And that was the Mardi Gras of Key West, taken to levels that we weren't familiar with.
So you guys only went once.
One time was enough.
Okay.
One time was enough.
Yeah.
So, what did y'all paint up as?
We didn't.
Oh, we stuck out like sore thumbs. I had topsiders on, a white T-shirt, and some khaki shorts on, and I looked like an alien down there, dressed like that.
They were feeding each other in the restaurant. Let's just put it that way. They were feeding each other in the
You're gonna have
restaurant.
to cut this out. But Broadus kept saying, "Let's go to Atlantic Shores." Remember that? We got to go to Atlantic Shores. That's where all the girls are. We got to go to Atlantic Shores. So we go to Atlantic Shores, and we're walking up this boardwalk, and there's a pool on the left-hand side, and there were 2 guys in the pool making out. And I looked at Broadus. I said, "God knows, what are you getting us into here?" So we made an about face, and we left Atlantic Shores. But Broadus just knew that was the place to be. I don't know who told him to go there.
But Broadus caught half of the beads that were thrown out of those floats.
It was so strange that there was a police officer standing there, and I said, can I get my picture taken with you? You're the only normal looking person around here. So there's a picture of me standing beside the police officer getting my picture taken. That was something else.
That was
Years
a wild affair.
Yeah. And then you said, you'll never see anything like this in Raleigh, North Carolina, John Boy. And these two big guys dressed up, and they had dresses on, standing right behind Jim. And they said, oh, well, we live in Atlantic Beach. And I said, so does he. And anyway, I think they said something to you, and I just turned around and walked away. I left Jim and those two big guys in dresses.
Yep.
Maybe that's who you're talking about, was feeding them.
All I know is what Broadus said. He's not here to deny. Y'all are feeding him.
BJ, what's your favorite story?
Oh, I don't know. I like listening to the old ones. You know, these are all good ones.
And you know, Broadus got us all into jet skiing. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Used to jet ski like crazy.
He spent a lot of time at Dot Island, helping build the Stapleton, fishing on the Sea Hag.
The sea hag.
He loved his fishing. The picture you guys saw earlier, where that was you and Irene,
That's right. That was me and
that was the beginning of the sea fever. And that's the one that had the
Oh,
And he finally did away with it, and you chased the vodka around the rest of the time.
35 Bertram. Dr. Rose let him take it wherever you want to. So y'all pay the bills, take it wherever you want to. So sea fever showed up at the Salty Dog Marina a couple of years in Orlando. Ollie Winstead was Broadus knew Ollie. They met. Ollie had a 42 Bertram. The Annie Fanny. And Ollie, I think, is going to be there. I'm going to tell it anyway. Everybody's meeting at the Salty Dog, go out fishing, and some weekends it'd be a weather day. You know, you just get plugging in. Broadus loved his pig cookies. He really did.
he was good at it.
So we're sitting around, got a weather weekend, and Ollie drove up from Wilmington. Broadus had built that red truck, like Dr. Lemoy's. We're down there, not gonna go fishing, so Broadus is like, we need to have a pig picking. Broadus, yeah, on the Outer Banks, Mandiana, Dairy County, where are you gonna find a pig around there? Ollie's like, you boys wanna have pig picking? I'll go get us a pig. Ollie had driven up in his Mercedes. Where are you gonna find a pig? You have to drive back to Goldsboro somewhere to find a pig already to cook. He said, don't you boys worry about it. I'll be back. Sure enough, Mercedes goes off, everybody starts sitting around drinking because it's a blow day. About 3.5 hours later, you see this Mercedes coming back into the parking lot. And sure enough, there's a pig on the trunk of that Mercedes, stretched out, ready to go on the grill. He said, boys, y'all not gonna believe it. Found this pig, we saw him out there in the field. All we had in the car was a claw hammer. We went out there and we knocked that pig in the head, we got him cleaned up. We're ready to have a pig picking. And he never would tell the story of where he found that pig at, but we cooked that pig that weekend. And Broadus sitting right there, he'd be out at the grill, and he had beer in one hand, he put a little sauce on that pig. And the weather weekend turned into a pig picking weekend, which was, don't know if we remembered a lot of stuff on Monday morning, but it was a very good pig picking. Ollie did well. Still don't know how he found that pig.
I've heard part of that story before. And the gentleman that owned the pig saw Ollie in the act and confronted him. And he ended up at the pig picking with you guys.
If you're gonna steal my pig, you might as well invite me too.
I think Ollie paid him for the pig and invited him to the pig picking.
Well, at the time, it was a happy time around there, and I'm not sure, like I say, there's not a lot of memories of it. And Ollie showed up with a pig on the back of his new Mercedes. And went on the grill and we had a good picnic.
Remember how much fun we used to have with the original house that was here? His first house that he
I
built
was
here.
just thinking about that. You remember he got partial paralysis that year on the jet ski, and he couldn't do it. His left side was like weak or something, so he had to. He got in a wreck over here in the marsh or
Oh
something.
yeah, he
It hurt
hit the
his neck or
sandbar and
something.
flipped over
Yeah.
the jet ski and hurt his neck. Yeah.
And so he was, I don't know, in one weekend we weren't riding, but there was always 20 or 30 jet skis tied up. And Broadus's rule was Coors Light. If it wasn't Coors Light, you left it in your boat or in your car, and you could only bring one at a time, so you had to walk back to get it and walk back to the back porch. So everybody brought Coors Light. Well, you guys were here because Jennifer and Evans were here, and we started a water balloon fight and a water gun fight. And Broadus sat out there in that rocking chair when that little octagon pad was back there. And we had water. We were on the roof. We were running through the house with water guns and water balloons. And I don't know how I didn't get in any trouble for that because now.
Well, it was probably 25 or 30 people, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, we were. I mean,
Jim
That
was
was the time
There we-
I threw that water balloon over the roof, came down through the lattice, hit Mike Lee in the head. He thought it was you. He blamed you, but it was me. And in the head, obviously it was just luck.
Tell him what Mike said.
My heart! He was going, does anybody have any hairspray? He's worried about hairspray.
So when
in the middle of a water fight.
One of the first Friday nights when he had bought this house, I came down here. I stayed on a Friday night, and he says, "We'll get up tomorrow morning and go to Bojangles." And so we all went to bed, probably about midnight or so. And at 5 o'clock in the morning, he had the stereo volume turned wide open, and he flipped it on. And it was just, I jumped out of the bed. I didn't, it was incredibly loud. And I opened the door. I said, "What's going on?" He goes, "It's time for Bojangles." At 5, so we got dressed and we pulled in the parking lot and waited for Bojangles to finally open at 5:30. And we went in and we were there for about an hour. And we got back. It was Saturday morning. We got back here at 6:30. I looked at Broadus and I said, "Now what? It's 6:30 in the morning. What are we going to do now?" He said, "I'm going to go outside and weed eat." And at 6:30 in the morning, yeah. I know he woke the neighbors up all around. I said, "Broadus, you gonna wake him up?" He goes, "It's time for him to get up."
So he was never worried about what anybody else thought. That's for sure.
No,
he was on his own pace, and if you
Yeah.
didn't want to be on it, well, tough.
Were you sitting in the den in the old house, the original house, and he threw the firecrackers in the den, and it burned holes in the carpet? Were y'all there? We were sitting in there, and Broadus we didn't know he was going to do it. He just throws firecrackers in there, and then he came in one time with the water hose and was spraying somebody with the water hose.
Oh, my
He was one creative guy.
Creative is a nice word.
I think this was in the early 70s. Broadus read, he was a prolific reader. And he read an article about a guy doing the Great Circle Loop in a small Boston whaler. Well, he had that 19-foot skiff with a 45 Honda on it. And so we decided to go to Key West, Florida on that thing. So he picked me up at my house over at Spooner's Creek, and we took off for Florida. One of the greatest boat trips I've ever been on. We were blessed, the water was smooth the whole trip. But we get down to Hires Marina in Sebastian, Florida. It is about 6 o'clock in the morning, and we were looking some breakfast. They said, "Well, no breakfast here, but about a mile down the road is Earl's Hideaway. It's a biker's bar, but they got breakfast sandwiches." I said, "Okay." So we walked down there, and this whole trip from here to there, we hadn't had one beer, no alcohol. But we're sitting in there, and the telephone man comes in to go to work and orders a Bloody Mary. And Broadus looks at me and says, "You know what I'm thinking?" I said, "I'm afraid I do." So we started after the Bloody Mary and back to the boat. We had us some beers. We continued on the south.
And how far did you go make it to Key West in the
We
skip?
did.
Did you guys, and then stay there how long and turn around and came back?
Well, we left the boat.
Well, wait, I know what they were doing. Ryan.
You
They were
know,
going back
they were down there and
for Fantasy Fest.
Yeah,
Jim just spilled the beans.
Yeah, they were. Except the difference is they stayed at, what was the name of the place?
Atlantic Shores.
They stayed there this time.
Complimentary rooms.
Feeding the other couple.
We actually stayed in Juneau Beach with Virgil Dixon.
Virgil Dixon.
Yeah.
So now we know the truth. You've been to
Yeah.
Fantasy Fest twice. You and
No,
Brothers.
it wasn't fantasy. It wasn't fantasy fest.
Was that the trip that you got the speeding ticket?
Yep. Same trip. We were in Georgia. And we've been bull talking, going down the waterway. And we go under a bridge, and a wildlife officer pulls us. And he got to the boat, he says, you making a wake when you went under that bridge. And I said, well, I didn't see a no wake sign. He said, in the state of Georgia, we can't afford to put a sign on every bridge. He said, where y'all going? I said, we're going to Key West. He says, in that? I said, yes, sir. We had our bags in those garbage bags, closing them garbage bags piled up in front of the boat. But anyway, he says, where are you going now? I said, we're going to go down to Thunderbolt. He said, no, you don't want to go there. He says, follow me. So he led us downtown Savannah, put us up on the police dock downtown, and Broadus and I got us a room right there overlooking the river. And the cop turned out to be the nicest person you could imagine. But we had a great meal and enjoyed Savannah, and the next day we were on our way.
How far would you try to travel in a day? 50 miles?
We averaged 20 miles an hour, 10 miles a gallon, and we ran about 8 hours.
Okay.
And so
So you
you,
made some good distance.
Yeah.
you docked in Savannah at a police dock
Uh-huh.
in a little bitty boat and
19
got
feet.
off of it with black garbage bags and went and checked in a hotel.
Yeah. And he had they looked after our boat. There was guards, and they looked after our boat that night, so we didn't have to worry about
Stealing something.
any space.
I think what happened though, the police officer looked at Broadus and then felt sorry for Jim and put him up in a room.
That's one of the greatest boat trips I've ever had, and the second greatest one was with Broadus, which was years later when we did an Alaska trip.
Andy was on that trip, wasn't
Andy put it together.
You didn't do that in an 18-foot whaler, did you?
No, that was
he? Bayliner.
a 42-foot bayliner. Yeah, that
Don't ask me
was.
why I remember that. I just do.
How many
It
crabs
was-
did y'all eat on that trip?
Pardon?
How many crabs did y'all eat on that trip? Because I remember Broadus getting quite upset about the food situation because Andy kept going and pulling other people's crab pots or lobster pots or something. And
Well, Andy was in control of the food. Broadus and I didn't have any input on what we were eating. Broadus was the boat captain. I was the navigator. And Andy was the cook. When we went to shore, Andy went to the grocery store and bought what he wanted. He brought it back to the boat and fixed it for us. But it was great. No complaints. But Broadus and I had zero input on what we were going to eat. But that was a great trip, once in a lifetime trip.
You remember that time that you and Broadus had flown to Treasure Key down in the Bahamas, and I didn't know you guys were going. and I flew down there, and we were walking down the beach, and there's Broadus and Jim and Carol, and I don't know who else was there, and who, I forgot who was with me. But that was the wildest thing, that no idea that we were gonna be down there.
Carol was 40 years old. It was her birthday, and these little umbrella drinks kept showing up. And she hadn't had anything to drink since then.
I'll never forget
Pina
that.
coladas.
Broadus would, he'd go snorkeling. We would rent a boat, and he'd go snorkeling, and he'd see some of the bottom of the ocean was grassy, and he'd see those lobster antennas sticking out.
Yeah.
And Broadus would grab the antennas, and he came at one time and he had 4 lobsters stuffed in his pockets. And yeah, he was pretty quick actually.
I think we flew the 210 to
Treasure.
Treasure King. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a nice airplane.
Yeah.
Buzz, how did you and Broadus get started in business together?
We bought some houses down in Charleston, South Carolina. I can't tell these stories. we're not going down that road, no.
I can bleep. You tell the story. I can bleep.
No.
Yeah, he doesn't
I'm
wanna-
not,
he
I'm
doesn't
not
wanna
telling
know
these
film.
stories, no.
Yeah.
There were some rental payments that didn't get cash payments.
No. Let's just say no. We're just not going down there.
You gotta tell it.
No.
Have something.
But there were some funny things. Like, I remember one time we had to put this lady out at Christmas. So we go down there and we put her stuff out on the street. She gets a drop cord and plugs in the Christmas tree. But we were nice. She came up with the money and we let her move back in. There was one more time where the lady we had to put her out on the street, and the lady met us with no clothes on. So we had to go get the constable, went and got the police. Police put a blanket on her. Y'all have heard Broadus tell this story, haven't you? You've heard it, Michelle, haven't you? They put a blanket around her, and they set her on the curb. We unloaded the house, and then we drove off. She's sitting on the curb, just wrapped in a blanket.
John, did you ever ride in Broadus's airport car?
You talking about the Rolls Royce?
The one that the trunk filled up with water.
What kind of car was it?
It was a Cadillac. I was on the last ride with him.
Was it a convertible Cadillac?
No, it was not, but the roof, he might have thought it was because the roof was leaking, and he kept his umbrellas in it.
Umbrellas in the car. When it rained.
And when you ride down the road, it would kind of go like. And we pulled in at Hardee's one time. We were coming in. We pulled in at Hardee's, and we go to the drive-in, at the Hardee's to get it. And I need 2 Cokes, 2 burgers. He said, "What, sir?" 2 Cokes. "What, sir?" Finally, on the 4th time, she said, "You just gotta cut that motor off." I mean, so we're riding down the road with it, knowing you can hear the water sloshing in the trunk. It died over there behind Pete's Tackle. And we pushed it off the road, out of the road, and that's the last time we saw it. I think, didn't you come by and give us a ride to the airport that time, Chuck? Chuck came by and gave us a ride back to the airport, and that was the end of the car. I asked Broadus, he didn't know what happened to it.
BJ, did you know that Broadus had a Rolls Royce?
I knew he had Rolls Royce and SL.
Yeah, had that at the airport. And I don't know how long he had it, Buzz. I don't remember, but it was a nice
He
car.
bought it from Dr. Adcock's estate, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. But
He did.
he's the only guy I've ever known that owned a Rolls Royce.
So when I was maybe my first school dance, I needed a suit. So Broadus's idea was, we're just gonna have his suits retailored for me. Well, I mean, I don't know if you guys see the size difference, but he's a solid foot taller than me, Well, we go, oh man, he's got this pinstripe one and this black one, and he's got this white one. It's great. Broadus is gonna take me somewhere. We're gonna get measured up. We're in Raleigh. I've never done anything like this in my life. I'm 13, 14, 15, somewhere there. That white suit, I'm thinking, hey, man, that's a pretty good looking suit. Well, I go in the dressing room and I get that suit put on, and I put it on. And I walk out of the dressing room and I look at Broadus. The whole front of this thing Looks like he got shot. It's a barbecue stain this big on the front of that jacket. And I said, big guy, I said, what is going on here? And I said, well, first off, why do you own a white suit? First and foremost, pure white suit. He said, have you ever seen the Great Gatsby? And I said, yeah. He goes, well, that's the suit I used to wear when I'd ride that Rolls Royce around like the Great Gatsby. He said, I had a hat and a cane and everything. And I go, he said, one day I was riding in Rolls Royce eating and I spilled it. I forgot I spilled out in that suit. I said, how the hell are we gonna get this thing? I can't wear this anywhere. I mean, it was massive. It looked like somebody threw a water balloon full of barbecue sauce at me. I mean, it was everywhere. It wasn't just a drop. Oh man, I can picture him riding around in Rolls Royce in a all white suit.
Eating barbecue.
He's a character, man. Yeah, he's a character.
Broadus had a hat, I think it came from American Airlines through Andy. Looked like a chauffeur's hat, it was a captain's hat. And he used to put that hat on when he drove that road.
Oh my goodness.
I remember you told him about the ducks, feeding the ducks and how they would dive. So he bought this thing of duck feed, duck corn, and he would feed them. So when Broadus would go back to Raleigh, I had moved down here at that point. I would go get the duck feed and leave a trail for them to go up on his back porch.
First time I've heard this one.
I think this was pre-Rochelle too. This was in this old house, And he would tell me, he says, you know those damn ducks? I remember that. Those damn ducks come up and poop on my porch, and they'll even peck at the door for me to come out and feed them. I don't know what's going on.
Once they start, they don't stop.
I left that duck feed out there, and I'd go up there every day and feed those ducks, leave them right up to his porch.
I always remember after he told a story, and he'd say, and that's a fact. And that's a fact.
Oh mercy.
Shell, have you got any funny stories that you can talk about?
No,
Okay.
I'm not a good story.
I'm gonna have to tell about how those two got together. And all I know is how we got them there. Rochelle's working with Terry and Broadus, ladies man, wherever, always, I'm never gonna get married. No way. So Terry and I, Rochelle needs to meet Broadus. Rochelle, we need to get those two introduced to each other. So I think the story goes, you can correct me, but you drove over to the house, and we drove up, because you gotta know Broadus. He's gonna be a wild guy, but he's actually the greatest, most polite guy when there's not a crowd around. So we were knowing Broadus, a little concerned, and we didn't want to leave Rochelle over here, but got over here. He had his motor yacht back there to have us. And we got to talking, and then we ended up going looking around the boat, all that, and Terry and I were like, well, maybe it's time we've got the introduction, they've met each other. Maybe time to just take Rochelle back to the house and let Broadus contemplate and Rochelle contemplate. So I think Rochelle ends up, Rochelle, you ready to go? No, Broadus, I'll bring her back home. Don't worry about it. And they stayed out on the boat for a couple hours, and eventually she came back to her car. And from then on, it was.
I asked him, I said, did you have a good time? He goes, yeah, I did, and that's a fact.
And the man that said he would never get married got married.
Thank you for that.
And his short
Yep.
pants.
Yep, we wore shorts and Hawaiian shirts with tuxedo tops and flip flops.
Yeah, I started wearing my shorts today, but it's a little cold outside, not that tough.
And Broadus was always one to. He was going to rush to a church house, so we got married in the lot across the street at sunrise because he wasn't going any further.
Yeah.
So that's funny. Yeah, that's good. And then had a pig picking afterwards to celebrate.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing says Broadus like that setup right there. So
You know, Broadus knew a lot about real estate. He was very nice. If he got into something and got interested in it, he was gonna find out everything that he could about it. So
Especially that property down there south Saunders Street. And the city, we had all the city, ended up selling it to the city.
yeah, he was really strategic. He kept buying when a house would come on the market, he would buy that house and end up owning the whole city block. And then the city of Raleigh wanted that block from Broadus because they only had to deal with one person. So that was pretty smart of Broadus. Really smart.
I learned a lot down there on Jamaica Drive. I learned a whole lot. I learned how to roof houses. I learned how to go to the police substation and file complaints. I learned how to stake out drug busts. I mean, I learned how to watch a handicapped man get beat up for his monthly stipend by hookers. I mean, I learned so much stuff down there that it's pretty remarkable. Learn how to collect rent. That's where the name Rent Man came from.
Yeah.
Broadus would pull down there on Friday afternoon about 3 o'clock. Here comes the Rent Man, Rent Man, Rent Man, Rent Man. And they'd all start hooting and hollering, and then Broadus had to go back 4 or 5 more times throughout the week to get everybody else's money because nobody had it. But if you weren't there at 3 o'clock on Friday,
You can't broadcast this, but you remember when he would have those. I went up to him one day and I looked in the truck and he had all these cigarettes in there. I
And sold them for 20 cents a piece.
25, a quarter a piece. I said, "What are you doing, Broadus?" He goes, "I sell them to the tenants 25 cents a cigarette."
And he used to cash the government checks for them.
Yeah, and I said, "Well,
And charge them.
I said, "Well, did you give him?" Yeah, he would. I said, "Did you give him a match?" He goes, "No, I was gonna be nice to him. I'd like a cigarette for him."
I always said, when are you going to start selling chicken? Over the convenience store, up in the back of your truck.
But he was an entrepreneur. He was.
And he loaned him money. And what was it? If he loaned you $1, he wanted 2 back. I mean, I'm there usury.
Did Broadus ever work for anybody in his life? He always worked for himself, didn't he? He always did his own thing.
He did a little apprenticeship with Tom Buffalo that got him started.
Tom Buffalo, yeah, I remember Tom.
He had something going on with Jim Arrington. You remember him?
Mm-mm.
Jim Arrington was the
He worked for him. Almond dealer.
John Almond dealer in Raleigh. And I suppose that's how Broadus ended up with a Ticonderoga. But
That's how he met Jim, when they bought the boat from Jim.
well, Jim Arrington could make the best Bloody Mary that's ever been.
You like the Bloody Marys at Circuit 81. Everybody talks about how good they are. If you like spicy.
Oh yeah,
Bloody Marys,
that'd be
yeah.
good. Yeah.
Buzz, you guys built some houses when Mom and I first moved to Raleigh. Do you remember Broadus had that Massey Ferguson out there, and he was having to he was bush hogging the field next to it or something, and he ran over 3 or 4 yellow jackets' nest.
I don't remember that.
He came home, and I remember he got eat up, but then he wore a straw hat.
I don't remember that.
Remember that? I think it was at those houses.
I remember that time that lady wanted to kiss you, though.
She sure did. Hambone's girlfriend.
She didn't have any teeth, but she had tobacco juice running out of her mouth. She was chasing Benny around trying to kiss him.
That's how I became the pirate right there.
And he was hiding behind the truck. Benny, what are you doing behind?
I'll be quiet. She doesn't know I'm back here. Leave me alone for a minute.
She was trying to kiss Benny.
That's the only reason we were in Hambone's apartment was because that's when Hambone had poured the roofing tar in the back of the toilet tank to stop the toilet tank from leaking. And Broadus was in there going, you put roofing tar in the back of the toilet. And Hambone, you remember Hambone never wore shoes. It didn't matter what was going on. Hambone didn't have shoes on. Most of the time didn't have a shirt on. He was a
You
roofer.
couldn't understand a word he said except the end when he'd say, "Am I right?" That's the only thing I got. Everybody would shake their head. Yeah. Nobody had a clue what he was telling me.
Were you with him with Broadus when he ate that? It was either a bag of well, I know that he ate a bag of carrots one time and threw up, and then he ate a dozen of hot donuts one time and threw up on the side of the road. Were you with him?
No, I was with him the time we were down in Charleston and we bought those houses. Hot sign goes up on Krispy Kreme.
So you were celebrating, right?
So we go in there. Yeah. I need a hot donut. So I eat donut. Broadus eats a donut. These were mighty good. Let's have one more. So we get a dozen this time. He eats 6, I ate 6. You know, they still were pretty good, Broadus. So we got another dozen. We ate that second dozen and we were done for the day. I mean, I was so sick, I couldn't move.
Well, he threw up one time. I guess it was the bag of carrots. He was driving down to Charleston and had a big bag of those baby carrots, and he was just eating them all the way down there. And I remember calling him. I said, what are you doing? He goes, well, I'm almost in Charleston. He goes, I've been really sick. I said, what happened? He goes, laid that bag of carrots, and I threw up on the side of the road.
No, he didn't throw up the time we ate all those donuts, but it liked to kill us.
Broadus and I went to Oshkosh. Drove his truck. We were in Chicago and Broadus had to go pee. I mean, there was traffic. I don't know how many lanes, but I mean, lane after lane after lane of traffic, and it was just flying. So Broadus pulls over to one side and stops, and all this traffic is going zoom, 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 zoom. And he gets out of the truck and pees right in the middle of Chicago. And people, it didn't matter. You know, boy, he said, "Boy, that felt good."
And that's a fact.
And then he used to like to play those movies. Remember how Pee Wee Herman, he went
He did. Every weekend we were watching
and
Pee
he
Wee
would play
Herman.
that same scene over. Paging Mr. Herman, paging Mr. Herman. And Jim said to me, I just don't get it. All I see is paging Mr. Herman. What's the rest of the movie about? Paging Mr. Herman.
I had forgotten about that, the Pee Wee Herman.
And he would play it over and over again, that one line. Paging Mr. Herman, paging Mr. Herman.
Do you remember Broadus's flexible bus?
Yes, I do.
Bought the bus, and it had a diesel engine sticking out the rear of the bus. About that much of the engine was just out, and they had built a little doghouse over the engine. And we were going to drive this thing to Kaler, South Dakota, to go pheasant hunting. Well, Broadus had all kinds of radios and stuff. We put a stereo in the thing, a TV, and a television where you could watch movies, and built some bunks in the back where you could go back and take a nap. The only problem was going down the road. If you got in that bunk, you couldn't get out of it. It was
Flopping around.
But when we first got it, it had a 10-speed Road Ranger transmission that was put in backwards because that transmission was designed to go into a vehicle with the engine in the front, but this engine was in the back. So the shift pattern and the linkage was just wore out on it. But we took it out in the country to go learn how to drive it. But when Broadus got through, I said, Broadus, I don't think this thing can hold up for me to learn how to drive after you got through with it. But he could shift it perfect. And the way we went to South Dakota, there was a couple other guys with us. We would get to a town, Broadus would hop in the seat and shift us through the city, and then he'd get out and somebody else would steer going down the road. But we made it to Kaler, South Dakota in that thing.
What year was that approximately? Do you remember?
I don't have any idea, but when we got back with that thing, he sold it to a black gospel group. and we got the record, and they gave us an autographed record.
Is this the one that could beat everybody up the hills, but
Yeah.
everybody blow by you going down?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
We passed him going up the hill.
He was, speaking of him shifting it perfectly, you know, he bought the 58 Hatters, and we had it here. We used it a lot. We used to go, you know, almost every weekend we were going to the Cape there. And he could take that boat, and he could back it down this canal like it was nobody's business.
He could turn it around.
And he turned it around here a couple times. It's only like 62 feet.
Yeah.
And he turned around a 58-foot boat.
Yep.
Yep.
And turned it right around and pulled it right in, and no problem. He was everything that he touched. He was good at. He excelled.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
pretty
Did you know,
remarkable.
were you with us when we took it to Overcoat that time, and he was washing over those docks going down Hoare Creek, and the water was just, he was throwing that big wake, and it was just, I mean, people were out there on their docks hollering at him, and he was just rolling. Weren't you on there that time, or were you not?
Yeah, maybe, I don't know.
And the water was just literally, he was throwing such a big wake, it was really rolling over their docks. And they were out there hollering, he just kept.
Wasn't going fast.
No, he was just going along like that, and it was just piling it over, and they were out there hollering. I mean, it was.
We took that 19-foot Carolina skiff over to the marsh to go camping. You remember that? Were you on a
Oh, yeah.
camping trip? And we loaded that thing down. And I don't know what the rating is on a 19-foot Carolina skiff,
But we exceeded.
but we exceeded it, that's for sure. We had that thing loaded so far down that over here on the, right next to the port there, the island, we had it, Broadus pulled the engine up, got over next to the beach, and he did it putting along. Because that's before the port was a no-wake zone. And we only had about 2 inches of freeboard left out of the water, and he was scared we were going to swamp the boat going through the port. And so he got in shallow enough water to where if it went down, we'd just touch the bottom and we wouldn't sink. And we went all the way around there and got pulled up. That was the worst camping trip in the world because there was nothing but mosquitoes.
Do you remember we kind of ran up on the sandbar a little bit, and I got out of the boat and was trying to push. You may have been helping me, and one of those scenic cruise boats was going by. And you remember that, Shell? There was 100 people laughing at us. It looked like the Beverly Hillbillies. I mean, the boat was just piled up with junk. We were pushing it, and people were laughing at us.
And we were only going for like one night. I mean, I don't know what we had so much stuff for.
We were gone for a week.
Oh, man.
I remember I got up that next morning and cooked. I was cooking all that. I cooked all that bacon and toast and whatever. And it was you and your cousins, and you guys didn't want to eat it. And Buzz runs out with Bojangles.
I was going
with
fishing.
some Bojangles biscuits and saved they. You remember
And
that?
I was
Shell?
going
We had all
fishing,
that
and I
bacon and
stopped
eggs.
in, gave y'all some Bojangles biscuits.
Yeah. Couldn't believe that.
Bojangles saved the day.
It did.
We had a permanent residency at Bojangles.
Yeah, who doesn't want bacon and eggs though when you camping?
I don't know.
Well, you did.
I did.
He did.
He and Angie had a very special relationship at Bojangles.
They sure did.
She did a great job. She knew every time he walked in, she'd have it ready.
Every morning, Broadus used to take me to school, middle school, and I guess a little bit of elementary school before I could drive. And we'd go every morning in Raleigh. We met Jim Anthony. He was a deputy sheriff.
Yeah.
And Mike Lee would meet us a bunch, and we'd have breakfast every morning. And then as I got to where I was helping them, I was in year-round school, so when I was out, we would typically go somewhere for a week. And then for a week, I got to hang out with Broadus. And by hang out, that meant free labor. And then there was another week where I could do what I wanted. But during that free labor week, we go to lunch. Lunch and dinner in our house was always scheduled. It was never, are you hungry?
It's time to eat.
Lunch is at 11:30. Why is it 11:30? Because you got to beat the church crowd. It's Tuesday. Doesn't matter. You got to beat the church crowd. So 11:30 was lunch, and that was the deal. And y'all guys probably still go to lunch at 11:30, you know. And then dinner was at 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock. And so now, you know, I'm married off and gone, and Mom and Broadus would come up to the house, 5 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock. Broadus sitting there going, Mr. Benny, where are we having dinner? Mr. Benny, Mr. Benny. Well, we don't eat until 7:30, 8 o'clock. And so he's mad and upset. He's having to go get snacks and do stuff throughout the day because I'm ready to eat, ready to eat, ready to eat. Gotta go to bed at 8, you know.
You remember the Bojangles on Old Wake Forest Road? Broadus used to go to that one. This is before he met your mom, and you know, and you were in the picture. And they knew him so well. Him and his dad would go in there he'd go in there for lunch and dinner every day. As soon as he'd get in line, they'd holler out, quarter white, dirty rice, sweet iced tea. He got the same thing. He'd get it for lunch and dinner. And he said, yeah, Buzz, they know me in there, man. It's great. I don't even have to order.
We went there the same one we went to. We went one time. They brought us take me to school. We get there. Well, it starts snowing. Oh, no big deal. Just starting to flurry. Well, they go and lock the doors, and it's just me and Broadus sitting in there eating. And they said, all right, we're going to give you all the food to take home. We're going to close for the day. It looks like it's going to be snowed out. Broadus was so happy. I don't know how much chicken and rice and biscuits they gave us to take home, but we sat there and ate breakfast and took home 2 or 3 tailgate specials that day because they were going to close. They canceled school. And after school was always, if you picked me up, you hungry? Well, I could have a snack, you know. It wasn't a question of what would you like, you know. He just drove straight to Bojangles, and that was the end of the conversation. So,
You remember that time it snowed probably 20 inches in Raleigh? It was a surprise snowstorm. And I guess it was about 6:30 that morning. Broadus called me, and he didn't have his truck was in the shop, I think, or something. But anyway, I went and picked you guys up. It was all my Jeep was all my Jeep could do to get through that snow. It was so deep, you know, because I was plowing through it. But even in rain, sleet, or snow, Broadus had to go to Bojangles.
yeah.
So I picked you guys up and we went to Bojangles. Do you remember that show?
We came back over to your house that night and went sledding. There's some pictures of that.
We sure did.
Yep. And there's actually a picture of me Broadus was laying down on the sled, and I'm laying on top of Broadus going down that big old hill that you lived on. Was that Huntington Ridge?
Hunting Ridge, yeah. I think we're on the road over there. It was a little steeper, but yeah, right there.
That was a good time.
That was a long time ago. It's 22 years ago. Or 23 years ago. Something like that. Maybe longer.
Probably 28.
You guys are getting
She's
old.
35.
Getting?
The alternative isn't good.
No. So whose idea was it for the BR549 on this box?
I think it was Mom's pretty much. That was Broadus's go-to. You know, we'd go traveling everywhere, and they'd ask for. Broadus didn't want to give it. He's almost a conspiracy theorist. He doesn't want to give anybody any information. And we'd get somewhere and they'd say, "Well, we need your license plate number." You know, Broadus get all mad with him. So everywhere we went, our license plate was BR549. No telling how many people went through hotel parking lots looking for a car that doesn't exist. But that's what he wrote down. That's from Howdy Doody. That was the license plate on there, and that's what he wrote down for. Wasn't that right?
Hee-haw. Junior Samples.
Yeah.
Called BR549.
Yeah. So,
BR, Broadus Rose, 549.
that was
Howdy
him.
Doody. I don't think Broadus would watch Howdy Doody.
He was Howdy Doody.
Both of those were before my time.
Jolly old guy. I swear he's just so much fun. I had my kids, and we were looking through pictures, and Broadus had volunteered. He had a Santa Claus suit, and Michelle had her Santa Claus. They came over, and he got up on the roof. The boys were maybe, I don't know, 3 and 5 or 6. They were young. Guys, it's no Santa Claus to show up. He's up on the roof.
Oh, ho, ho!
Come down the ladder, and we're glad he didn't bust a leg coming down the ladder. Michelle's in her little Santa Claus suit, and the boys were just like, "It's Santa Claus! baby roll just perfect.
He was good.
Yeah,
I never met a kid that didn't love Broadus.
Yes, exactly.
That's
Well, they could
cool.
relate to him.
I think it the other way.
He was so much fun.
I think I got those.
What made, and you guys may not know the answer to this, but I've always been curious, what, Meemaw, Broadus's mom, what made Broadus buy her all of the exotic animals and things that she didn't necessarily need? I know at one point he bought her goats, and then they ate through her jaguar, and then when I was younger, he bought her the potbelly pig, Pepper, and it lived in the house and ate dog food. But Broadus used to supply all these things. Was there any particular reason, or was that just Broadus?
No priceless.
She may have just mentioned that, I've seen that picture, yeah. That's a great sound.
I know what
And
kind
a great
of
Mrs.
goat it
Claus
was.
too.
Oh yeah. Did you
Yeah.
sell him the goat?
Nope, I was with him when he bought it. It was a Damphino.
Okay.
Back to high school. Chuck, do you remember we took that one of our school trips
I probably
and
remember
Broadus
that.
set his underwear on fire?
Wait a minute, how do you set your underwear on fire?
To light the gas.
Light him!
It
He
gets up there,
jacked
it's
his
on
butt
the
up there and
bed,
had to poo.
showing everybody else, and all of a sudden, skip it.
And his underwear. I've never seen Broadus move so fast.
Oh my gosh.
What did I
Great twin. Whoosh.
His underwear.
All these
Damphino
girls and guys sitting around there. He's done it multiple times, but that time
It didn't work.
Like he planned.
He was gonna show us all something. We were all.
Hey, y'all. Hey y'all, watch this. Whoosh.
He was jumping, stomping.
Linda, Lisa, Jill, the whole crowd.
Oh
Oh God, Ginger, who was your girlfriend's name? Ginger? Brockton. Yeah. Brockton,
What about her?
your girlfriend.
She wasn't ours. I don't think. Oh me. Remember he put us all. We all got in his van, the whole class, and remember how he said it never drove the same because it was too heavy for it. That was that blue and white van.
Well, there's no shortage of stories. That's for sure.
Are there any that?
And they're all good stories, about Broadus. There's
Oh,
never
yeah.
no bad stories with Broadus. Always something fun or
But
creative.
Buzz, you do have to tell them about you being the expert witness.
No, not.
Why?
I don't mind talking about it, but I'm not talking about that. No, the
No,
camera's
he
going
doesn't
off
want-
before I tell those stories.
He
No,
doesn't want evidence against him later.
no stories like that till the camera goes off. No,
Broadus in that 150.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to tell the best stories. We can't tell.
I'm glad I got
Is
that.
that the current 150?
Yep.
I'm not telling those stories.
Yeah.
I saw his glasses hanging in there. That almost got me.
Oh man.
Park ride?
Yep.
Except for all those books and stuff that were on the table. They got
He had me. There's Mom and I checked out the hatters on the yard a couple days ago. Well, last Friday, and on the refrigerator is still 2 pictures. It's you and Broadus propped up. Well, there's 3
There's
pictures.
me, Broadus, and Buzz propped up on the truck.
There's a Coors Light truck picture. There, and then there's
I wasn't in that one.
and then there's the Honey Hush one.
Yeah, the honey wagon.
The Honey Wagon. Sorry, not the Honey Hush. The Honey Wagon.
Honey wagon.
I heard more about that.
Because it was in the Newport parade.
Christmas.
And me and Broadus and Buzz and I think Rochelle, you took the picture.
I think so.
And we all went to the
I forgot
Newport,
significance of it, though.
Mainly because we heard the honey wagon was going to be in the parade and Broadus wanted to see that.
Remember, the guy that you learned about roofing from, he had a walker. Broadus hired this guy, had him tearing off a roof on a building. He walked with a walker. What was his name? Bobby Yates. He walked with a walker, and Broadus paid him $5 a day. And he'd go up on the roof and tear off the roof,
Flip it like that to the
and he
next
put the
picture,
roof
right?
on it, and then he had him have this tree, huge tree. He gave him one sawzall blade a day to cut it down, and paid him $5 a day. He wouldn't let him have the pitchfork to clean up the brush with because he's afraid he'd stick somebody.
He was watching Faye, but she fell off that. If you flip that picture, you see her fall. I held that in ransom for a few years on him. Did you see her fall on that?
But completely, this story has nothing to do with Broadus. You remember Mr. House, H.H. House? You remember H.H.?
I remember House.
Remember how crazy he was?
Last time I saw him was at Oakwood. You were down there at
At
Howard's
Pub eating lunch?
Yeah.
Well, he was a wild man, and I was having lunch, that was breakfast with him one day, and the bank called him and said, hey, you need to get down here. And he says, hey, man, ride with me down to the bank. So I jumped in the car with him, which was a huge mistake. And he's speeding down Salisbury Street, and there's a crosswalk down there, and everybody started stopping. So H.H. had to stop. He didn't want to, but he had to stop. And everybody's walking by, and there was an old black man in a wheelchair. And the black man, he was going as fast as he could. I mean, he was trying to go as fast as he could. H.H. honks the horn and says, roll on, man, roll on. And all these people are standing around. I got down in the floorboard. That was one of the most embarrassing things that's ever happened to me. Roll on, man, roll on.
Do you remember when we went to watch State in Notre Dame, and Ned was in the back seat?
Oh yeah, Ned was with us, and so he was the whining this guy. It was too hot. We were driving in Broadus would go.
Putting the pig together.
If you don't shut up, Ned, I'm gonna cut your air off. And he wouldn't shut up, so Broadus would cut the air conditioning off
We
in
would
the
cook
back.
it up.
Remember that?
Which was Ned was basically.
How much had to been drinking?
Evans and I were not doing anything, but now we're back here sweating because Evans and I were in the back seat with Ned. Ned just kept jawing, and then Ned was worried. He had those flags, had the flags put up on the
They were your
windows.
flags.
Were they my flags?
Yeah, well.
Don't roll the windows down. No. Somehow one of the windows got rolled down going down 95, and of course, that flag was gone. And Ned was upset about that flag the rest of the trip.
He was just whining, and Broadus was like, shut up, Ned, or I'm going to cut the hair off. And every now and then you'd cut the hair off on it. Ned would shut up, and he'd cut it back off. And then you'd start yelling, I'm going to cut your hair off.
He said it's the only thing he could change on him. Golly. Oh man. Broadus told me one time that he said if you ever need anything, if you ever need a gun or a knife, he said all you gotta do is ride downtown and go in front of the courthouse. He said that's where they ditch them all before they go into the building. And he told me this because I went and I job shadowed Ned when I was in high school. And so Broadus takes me down to the courthouse to meet Ned, and I'm sitting in for the day. And Broadus goes, just look in there. And he starts pulling the bushes back and showing me where they've thrown all their stuff out in front of the courthouse, the bushes, so they can get in the building. They'll get it when they get back. I guess most of them don't get back out of the building to grab their stuff, so, Oh. Alan is a funny guy. One time, when I was in college, a bunch of friends and I went down to the house in Charleston. And I didn't have any money to speak of. But we get there, we're all going to stay at the house. There's 6 of us. Mom and Broadus were up here, I guess, or somewhere. Well, we get down there. We all want to go out. We want to do stuff. I got like $25. We made it down here, but we can't really do anything. Well, Broadus got change everywhere. He's got all these change jars. Well, he's got this trash can. It's this big, Well, I just raked, a little jar off the top of it. I took it to the coin machine. I got like 180 bucks. Heck yeah, you know, that's enough for the bar tab and gas to get back home tomorrow. I'm in good shape. I don't mention any of this. I mean, my friends went with me to the coin store, they're the only ones that know. That Monday morning, Broadus gets back to Charleston to do something. By 8 o'clock, he's called me and wants to know how much I stole out of his damn change jar. He said, Mr. Benny, how much money did you get out of my change jar? I said, none, what are you talking about? He said, there's money missing out of this change jar. I know how, you probably got a couple $100 out of there. Like, how did you even know this? You don't even know where the change jar was. I didn't even, nope, he knew exactly.
He had this guy working for him one time that was supposed to drew his windows, reglaze his windows. So he reglazed the windows and Broadus said, Buzz, you gotta see this job. This guy did a great job. Come over here and look. Look, they look pretty good. And so that afternoon it started raining. Well, he used sheetrock, Buzz. And it's running all down the windows. So he claimed Broadus owed him $50. The guy died, and one of the other guys that worked for Broadus comes up and said, you know, when Leon died, he claimed you still owed him $50. And Broadus goes, I didn't owe him $50. He said, well, he said you this. Well, we'll dig him up. And and the other guy said, well, they cremated him, Broadus. Broadus says, that's better yet. We only got to sweep him up.
We could probably sit here for another 2 hours and tell stories.
If we could tell the ones I want to tell, we
Yeah.
could stay here a long
There's
time.
some that I don't want to tell. I do, but I'm not going to.
Alright, I'll turn off the cameras and y'all can tell the stories you wanna tell.
Well, it's like a bunch of old timers sitting around. All we need is rocking chairs, sit around and reminisce.
Where did you and Broadus find Bobby and Buddy?
Okay,
and
all those
Shaky
guys,
and
remember
all
Buddy?
those guys worked for me years ago.
Okay.
They worked on the same crew, and Jay was the runner of the crew. And when they worked for Jay, they were really good, and they were a pretty good